Animal Crossing New Horizons has been out for just over a month now, heeding the community plenty of time to reflect on many of the game's unique new additions like terraforming and the crafting system that new and old players alike can enjoy. Although, the game is not without its flaws, with fans of the series keen to point out current gameplay issues, missing features, and many of the odd decisions made by the developers. I've spent the last week collecting as many of those problems and opinions directly from the community into multiple very long lists to help highlight the present flaws for players to become aware of, as well as to potentially assist developers in improving the experience. I'm planning on doing multiple videos on different topics to cover basically everything, positives and general ideas for the game too. In this video, I will be covering problems players currently have with the game, as well as questioning general design decisions and the simplest way to fix or at least improve them. I've got a really interesting separate video covering missing content coming soon, so stay tuned for that. Before I start listing off all the complaints I've collected, I think it's worth looking into what each previous game in the series introduced to help pave the way for New Horizons. Feel free to skip to here if you don't want to hear me talk about the previous games. I first played an Animal Crossing game when I was 8 or 9. I was gifted Let's Go to the City by my uncle while I was sick and had to stay home. During that time, I vividly remember using a second-hand Wii Stick my mum had bought me to play with my best friend who I couldn't see. Funnily enough, I think I bought New Leaf for a similar reason, to play while I was sick. Obviously, I haven't been able to play all the games in the series, although I did try Wild World a while back. Music is incredible, as you can hear in the background, but I could just not play it. The game's setup makes me so nauseous. This game is somehow really important because it experiments with a lot of features that would eventually become New Horizons. As the name describes, it takes place on a deserted island, introduces crafting, giant centipedes for some reason. It also introduced coconut trees with more than 3 fruit on it. And did I mention this random spin-off minigame introduced crafting, first place seeing logs, sticks and rocks. I wanted to highlight all of these important additions to show how much the series has grown since its humble beginnings in 2001. I also think that the period between the 2012 release of New Leaf through to New Horizons in 2020 is really interesting. After the sudden death of company president Satoru Iwata in July of 2015, a large company restructure occurred, which saw the previous in-house development division behind all prior Animal Crossing games, the Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development Division, being merged with Nintendo's Software Planning and Development Division, who had no experience in assisting with prior games, in September of the same year, to become the Nintendo Entertainment Planning and Development Division. Now, that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's indicative of the type of experimental Animal Crossing content we'd see from there onwards. I'm thinking Amiibo Festival, the New Leaf Welcome Amiibo update, Pocket Camp, and so on. That also includes Happy Home Designer, which was one of the final projects of the Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development Division before the merge. It's clear to see the idea for New Horizons have been simmering for years, with each consecutive game made during that period, including Elements, testing new ideas that would come to fruition in 2020. Now that that's out of my system, here is the list of not so good things about New Horizons. Trees, flowers, grass. As the first topic, I'm interested to see how people feel about this one. I don't feel the need to water my flowers anymore, unless I want hybrids of course. Them not dying makes there be no real stakes to growing them or even keeping up a relatively regular playtime in New Horizons. They're just there. If I plant a tree in a place the game doesn't approve of, it just stays there as a healthy sapling. As a player, I don't think that teaches you anything. I can just see someone new to the game continually walking past the dud sapling, wondering why it hasn't grown. Maybe thinking it's still okay, just takes longer for some reason. I'm okay with land deterioration being gone. I didn't really understand how that worked in the first place, so that one's fine. If they were to consider it, I think the smartest way to re-implement flowers dying is to make each individual flower have a pick limit. So if you were to pocket a flower from the same plant 7 times total, the flower would wilt. Tree saplings should just die generally. That's a weird one. Now this sounds really odd, but just look. I know you can pick them and use them for recipes, and the amount that are on your island impacts your island rating, but I don't even care to remove them. I have so many stacks of weeds I'm not using, like I don't really care to pick them up. They look nice most of the time. Text is obnoxious. Why does Wilbur have 3 dialogue boxes after you die? I want to get back out onto that island now. If I'm talking to Orville and want to visit a friend, why do I have to go through 11 different text boxes? He's just about the worst offender when it comes to NPC text. A lot of the stuff feels pretty self-explanatory too. He also shouldn't need to visually connect to the internet to help find who's online. My Switch is already connected to the internet. Is there a second layer of online I don't know about? It's a time waster. MetaGeek on Twitter made an amazing mock-up of what Orville's menu should look like. As bad as Orville is, CJ is so much worse. Firstly, on a separate note, his entire fishing tourney is garbage. 3 minutes is not enough to catch anything, let alone you need 300 points from his event to get the gold trophy. If you didn't have fish bait already prepared for the challenge, you are going to be screwed. I played for like 4 hours before 6 PM to get all his special items, and I only came out with a bronze trophy. That was after averaging 6 to 7 fish per 3 minutes. Now when it comes to CJ's mouth, the first time you speak to him and do your first fishing challenge, you have gone through 15 text boxes. Now for the first time, that's totally fine, because he's explaining to you how the challenge works. Thankfully after that, it's only like 2 text boxes. But something that doesn't change is how many text boxes you get whenever you come to him after the 3 minutes of his challenge. There are 9 slow text boxes where he just tells you what you already know. What's the point? He also kicks you out of the conversation, assuming you are going to want to take some fish out of the cooler. When you talk to him to sell the fish, you are always going to have 8 text boxes to go through. If you want to sell fish not a part of the tourney, there are always 9 text boxes. When you discover how many points you need to get some of his swag, since that's never explicitly said, you have another 10 text boxes to skim through before you get your item, every time. The entire fishing tourney event is actual trash. CJ is normally fine, but for the tourney, the game is openly wasting your time. It's pretty disappointing that so many of the recent seasonal events have been terrible, but man, Bunny Day was just as bad. Who in their right mind thought it'd be a good idea to entirely change multiple core mechanics of the game for an event? Looking back, I think it was more about timing than the actual event. The game had barely even been out for a week and a half before we were gifted this 12-day long hell. A lot of new players had their first few days promptly ruined by eggs flooding every facet of the game, making progression almost impossible. Thankfully, Nintendo patched the game before the 12 and changed how often eggs would appear. I could be alone here, but in comparison to how simple and cute Gulliver's country-focused New Leaf questions were, the dig for communicator parts in New Horizons feels so mundane. I like the idea that you can choose between giving them to him for still a cultural themed item, or save them and let them rust to put towards something else. But that's another topic entirely. No one can escape criticism nowadays, and Isabelle is no exception. The main problem people have with her is more the lack of things she actually has to do, which I agree with, but it's whatever. I think it's pretty clear that she's only in the game because she's become the face of Animal Crossing, and that's just okay. After Tom Nook passes his daily briefing roles to Isabelle is where I notice some problems. It's not that big of an issue, and it goes for Tom Nook too, but I just think it's a bit annoying how often her dialogue repeats itself a month in. How they say, "That's it for news today," despite characters like Flick, LaBelle, or Kix currently visiting your island. I think they should really be mentioned in this daily introduction. Nothing over the top, just, "Oh, Flick is also visiting today. Have fun." That's all I'm putting forward. Despite the huge number of improvements to villages AI-wise, myself and a lot of others are finding they're repeating themselves so much more than in previous titles. There seems to be less personal tasks too, like delivering presents to neighbours for example, or at least they seem less common. A suggestion that I think would also be really helpful is knowing the whereabouts of your villagers. No, I'm not thinking of knowing where they are at all times on your minimap. I'm thinking you can call them. I think this is such a lost area of potential for your Nook phone, seeing as the game makes it very clear that other NPCs like Tom Nook, Timmy and Tommy can call you and speak to you. Let me call up a villager. It's a new contact app on the Nook phone that gives you a list of all your current residents. Let's say you call Walt, for example. They'll ask what's up. You respond asking where they are. And I respond with a general location like, oh, I'm in the northeast corner of island name. See you around. Then your minimap has a new marker with the head of that villager above it. And just like that, you can hang out with that cool samurai kangaroo. I think this would be an incredible feature, especially when you might have villagers that you want to go see, hiding somewhere in the museum or another shop. It could take so long to pinpoint their location otherwise. Everyone's playstyle is totally different, all the way down to what Nook phone apps they're going to frequent more. So it'd be a really useful addition if, like a real-life smartphone, you can move the apps around to suit your preference. Also, I gotta say, the diversity in how villagers act is still so bare. It is the most subtle thing between them. All in all, it's annoying, but I think for a good while now at least, most of the villagers and their personalities have the blanks filled in by the player, which I want to say is what the game's all about. You know, like using your imagination and attaching feelings to virtual characters. But then the older games still have such great unfiltered speech between the player and other villagers. I want to be called a stinky bimbo idiot bad friend by villagers, Nintendo. Make it happen. At the very least, they could expand how the personalities actually work, giving all the jock birds specific lines, for example, that really separate them from the other jocks. It's just such a shame people can't have genuinely authentic favorite villagers apart from how they look. Another pretty big missed opportunity is player and villager interaction with furniture. Now I can't lie and say, in comparison to New Leaf, this game is a stellar improvement. You can literally push a lawnmower and it'll make lawnmower noises, or how fans interact with the environment. It's awesome. But I can't help but look to Happy Home Designer and Pocket Camp as to what could have been. Despite being a spin-off, it's pretty disappointing to not see such creative amenities from Pocket Camp that villagers can use return. I want to see my villagers doing sick tricks skating on half-pipes. I want to see my villagers just hanging out by the pool, maybe even riding a carousel. I want to do all these things too. Make them have little mini-games, Nintendo, go nuts. Growing up playing City Folk and New Leaf, one of my favourite features was the ability to go into the museum and actually learn a little bit, or at least brag to my parents that the game was educational, because it included short descriptions for each of the fish, bugs, fossils, and art pieces. What doesn't make very much sense to me is the fact that, apart from art, which tends to be obscured by the player if you want to read a description, this feature is now essentially locked behind Blathers himself, where you need to have the fish, bug, or fossil that you would like to learn about in your inventory. Now obviously, you have the option to be told about the specimen when you first donate it, but I'm going to go out on a whim here and say most people are donating in bulk and don't have the time to hear Blathers talk about them then. Besides, it isn't a feature that you should need to go out of your way to experience. I think part of the problem is how the museum is actually organised in New Horizons. I think it's been designed incredibly well to reflect a real museum, but for Animal Crossing, it isn't that practical. A lot of the exhibits, especially the fossil rooms, feel quite cramped, with multiple skeletons overlapping in the same spaces, making it really difficult to focus on an individual fossil. Fish and bugs are handled in a similar way, which is such a shame, where New Leaf showed a list of all the fish or bugs in each exhibit, giving you the option to choose for more information. The only other real complaint I have against the museum is the camera. It is so restrictive. The game kind of nudges you towards using the camera app to get a better look at things, but it really isn't convenient or very flexible. In New Leaf, the museum gave you full camera control, allowing for movement from 90 degrees all the way up to full 360-degree camera flexibility in some rooms. How incredible would just 90 degrees be in some of these rooms? Just give me the control I have in my New Horizons house. Come on. The Happy Home Academy is absolutely broken in New Horizons. I've seen some videos bragging about having gotten an S rank and how they did it, or trying to explain Feng Shui to new players. It really doesn't matter though, because right now with the game how it is, you're going to have a perfect home without even trying. Honestly, how did this get an S rank? It's just so surreal when it used to be so incredibly hard to get higher Happy Home Academy rankings. Personally, they're probably the most useless item in the game. Despite how cool it might be to have this big mech in your town that you put a bunch of your rusted parts and other materials towards, that you either found by chance in the recycle bin or saved instead of giving to Gulliver, after you've made that mech, that's it. From what I've seen, that is literally the only craftable item available that uses them. Why? I swear this was possible when visiting Tournament Island in New Leaf. It's especially weird when on either side, at the top of the island, you can't help but notice the tide pools, secret beach, and rocky areas that show the corners of the island. Let me fish from there. Also, I think that certain fish are meant to appear upon different layers of land, but I sure as hell haven't noticed it. I was waiting to find that there's some really cool, interesting, like mountain fish or something, but of course there isn't. The only fish still demonstrating this properly are the salmon and king salmon. I'm surprised I haven't seen this brought up more often, but why are rare fish and bugs so common all of a sudden? Because it is unreal how quickly I have filled up my encyclopedia/Critterpedia, let alone the museum, especially without having time traveled or visited Northern Hemisphere islands at all. I don't want to catch every type of fish right off the bat though, then have them all in cages and bowls waiting until the museum opens to dump them in there and move on to catching other stuff, I guess. My fish Critterpedia and how it's like 3/4 full within a month should not be possible. And it honestly doesn't even feel earned. Same thing applies to bugs and fossils in the museum. Also, why have they changed the name from the encyclopedia to the Critterpedia? They're only one letter apart in size, and one actually exists. If it's just less of a scary word to new players that don't know what an encyclopedia is, they can learn. Growing up, Animal Crossing honestly taught me a lot, and sadly, that's another thing this game has distanced itself from. On the topic of the museum, I wonder if they even intended the player to hoard all of the fish, bugs, and fossils they'd found outside their tent or house, waiting for the museum to open. Surely they considered this, especially when it's clear rare critter spawn rates are much higher. A very important feature that was literally in New Leaf is tool durability. Why the hell did they not visibly begin to break, or at the very least have a health bar when you're using them? In New Leaf, the axe would go through 3 levels of visual durability changes. Why isn't it in New Horizons? What happened? On that note, golden tools are trash, just straight up garbage. Myself and other people were pretty surprised to find out that golden tools do in fact break. After thinking about it, I don't honestly mind that much, but for how high the cost is to make them, you'd hope their durability is at the minimum 20 times higher than the regular equipment. I'm not sure what to think about the other types of equipment too. Not really sure if it's just an aesthetic thing, or if there's an actual durability advantage. I think having custom tools is cool, but I don't know. The fact that everything can break and you have no idea when that could be is pretty discouraging for making me invest in them. As pointed out by Captain Sunder, why does the watering can break? You're watering the flowers, not hitting them. I mean, this one does sound like a joke, but are they wrong? A fantastic new addition to the game with some baffling choices that make it so cumbersome to use. You should really be able to go into the Able Sister dressing room with the wand outfit on. If it's an actual game-breaking issue, why doesn't the game just automatically remove the wand clothing when you go into the dressing room, instead of having Mabel remind you you can't, and then you have to take it off yourself? Wouldn't it be so much easier and time-saving? I think it's kind of weird that Mabel just knows that you're wearing a wand outfit. It's really odd to me. I struggle to get how they managed to turn such a simple-sounding tool into something I don't think I truly understand. I'm definitely not alone here when I thought the wand would actually give you the clothing you want to wear, rather than just putting it on top. I think that's literally where the issue comes from. If I already have clothing on and want to use the wand, it definitely should not overlap. Just put the clothes that I had on into my inventory, and obviously if I don't have enough room, just tell me I can't use it. Easy as. One positive is I think that the simplicity of organizing it in your house or outside with a dresser is really cool. No, just kidding. I have one more to complain about. Why can't I show the clothing I have on my wand to LaBelle? Can she not see I am dressed in exactly what she's looking for? I mentioned Mabel being able to see your wand outfit for a reason. If she can see it, why can't Label recognize it? For how many new rugs seem to be in the game, it might be cool to... Oh, no, it's nothing. No, put them outside. I want to put my rugs in my yard. You could do this in Happy Home Designer. AK Family Home brought up what everyone was thinking. Why does the game need your Switch friends to come to your Animal Crossing island for you to register them to your Animal Crossing friends list? Why can't the game just pull up all of your Switch friends? This isn't the worst thing in the world, but you can only upload or download patterns to the Able Sisters custom design portal when they're open, which for creators is a pain. The custom design kiosk is just generally pretty underutilized as well. Being able to search specific creators and art is cool, but how much better would it be if it worked like the shared content menu in Smash Ultimate? Weird comparison, but hear me out. Where there was an organized catalog of trending designs, new designs, and editor picks. That sort of thing would be awesome and would only amplify the community engagement with sharing art at the Able Sisters. I hope this makes sense. When my gates are open, but no one else is on my island, why can't I place orders for items from the Nook Stops Nook shopping catalog? But I can place orders for furniture and clothing in the Redeem Nook Miles section, as well as buy new recipes. When I realized this, I assumed I couldn't place items in my house or outside either, but you can. What's up with the weird hypocrisy here? Coming into New Horizons, I was dead sure that the slow cutscenes and pauses to let people into your town or onto Tortimer's Island from New Leaf would be gone, but somehow I was wrong, and weirdly enough, it feels like the entire process of connecting to a friend's island actually takes longer than previously. As I've already addressed, Orville's dialogue is so time consuming as it is. On top of that, when you do get the chance to join a friend's island, or stranger's island, you're ushered through 3 to 4 separate loading screens before you're there. The time this takes can vary wildly, depending on how far away the person you're trying to join lives. This doesn't even take into consideration the time it wastes for people already on an island and the host, who have to stop everything they're doing to allow the visitor to even attempt to come over, sitting through the same loading landing screen the visitor sees, as well as a separate cutscene of them entering your airport through the gates. There seems to be even more cutscenes and loading screens for when you're going home too. The first point I have about this is people say, oh, it's to make sure the game's saved and nothing goes wrong. It's Animal Crossing. It shouldn't be that difficult. There's an automatic save feature now. If that's the problem, just make the game save more often when you're on another island. The second point is, this is mainly Nintendo's fault for somehow still relying on players' Ethernet-less connections to sustain gameplay. There are still no dedicated servers for any of Nintendo's games, and if there are, there surely aren't enough. It's worth remembering, Nintendo charge you now for this service. Nintendo are also an incredibly wealthy company. They can invest in this. It's not hard. The final point is just how horrible all of these shared loading screens are for people in the community just trying to do quick trades selling turnips. That sort of thing. The connection and amount of loading screens are nowhere near stable enough to satiate these kind of exchanges. The waiting is definitely more the problem. I shouldn't just arrive on a faraway island to be greeted with another visitor loading screen, which can leave me immobile for many minutes. Add a total of 5 other players in a queue to that scenario, and you're bound to give up waiting. I haven't seen many people bring this up, but a close friend has found this really frustrating, and I can totally agree with him. Efficiently placing paths should have been an ability unlocked much earlier in the game. Planning how you're gonna use your space shouldn't be a luxury. Paths are such an essential piece in designing your town. With how the game is structured, it's really difficult to truly plan out the future of your town without them. Now, I know the Animal Crossing devs love leaving a lot of missing information to be filled in by the community, but photos like this should not exist. Give us grids when terraforming. I'm gonna keep bringing this up throughout these videos, but in this specific mode, there are 5 unmapped buttons. Let me press L, for example, and have a grid appear over the island. It's that easy. Time is precious, and terraforming or even moving a house takes a bunch of time. If you make an error when attempting to place something, let it be placing a bridge and the game tells you there's no water, or trying to place inclines side by side, the game shouldn't punish you by stopping the flow of the game with a warning text box. The game should simply have a bubble pop up in the same vein as Timmy and Tommy politely saying goodbye when you leave the shop. That's all the player needs to understand that that isn't going to work. Creating or destroying cliffs and waterscaping should 100% be confined to different buttons. The amount of times I've been trying to quickly destroy a cliffside and accidentally rebuild the cliff I had just removed is so high. I honestly think it's even worse for waterscaping. Again, 5 unmapped buttons. Make A, B, build, and B, destroy. This one's got pretty popular recently. I saw this first mentioned by Miss Helmlock, and I can't believe they aren't in the game, honestly. It's just obvious. Why can't you make bridges between cliffs? That'd be amazing. Now, I do understand why this isn't an option, because to make waterfalls normally, you need to be atop a cliff, as well as a way to get off that cliff. But I would like to suggest 3 possible solutions to allow this. The first is, as long as there's one way down, you should be able to make corner waterfalls. The second is reminding the developers that the rescue service exists. A player should never really be entirely stuck, because this feature literally makes it impossible. The final fix relates to streamlining terraforming, as I previously mentioned. For waterscaping, you should be able to destroy or create waterfalls from ground level or facing cliffs. Where's all the diagonal building options too? Let me make diagonal fencing and inclines. It just feels so weird since you can make diagonal bridges. 8 measly inclines, and for some reason you can't place inclines side by side, or as I just mentioned, diagonally. 8 bridges. Personally, I'm not too fussed about bridges, but these are super freaking low limit for such a huge area. 3.5 layers of cliff. This didn't bother me until I tried putting it to work myself. Now, I get you can definitely use it for decorative purposes, but what's the point in even allowing the creation of a 4th cliff if you can't go up it? I promise you, Nintendo, climbing up one more layer is not dangerous. Remember, you aren't ever even told how many bridges and inclines you have to work with until you've used them all up, which is the worst when you can't move them. You have to destroy them. Just make it a thing, you know? Make it an option to join or not to join. Another thing I've learned about paths, specifically custom paths, is they don't actually appear on your map. Unlike the regular inbuilt ones, if you want them to appear on your map, currently you have to first place a regular path, then place your custom one on top of it. Finally, villagers often get in the way of terraforming. All you should need to do is go up to them and ask them to move, or they just generally avoid the player when they're in the island builder mode. The same thing applies to when villagers decide to sit down in really inconvenient places, again, like in front of a path you're building, or just when you're generally playing and they're blocking your way on a bridge, incline, or blocking you from entering a building. I haven't found myself moving any homes or shops yet, mainly because I've heard horror stories of how time-consuming and tedious it can be. Why are you restricted to moving houses one at a time? Big question. Why can't you move the museum half blocks like everything else? I've already seen a lot of posts on Twitter where people are just straight up losing their minds over their entire layout plans going out the window because of this one small yet significant limitation. Oh yeah, let me move the town hall or whatever it's called. While we're at it, maybe half paths might be helpful, or half cliff sides. That might make it easier to move the museum. So this is the main area of debate amongst players. Not even debate, it's pretty agreed upon that things like making multiples of items and items in bulk should be more streamlined, if not possible. It really can't be that hard to allow the player to make a bunch of fish bait at once, furniture, and especially tools. Currently, it is the most inefficient, time-wasting feature. It could be so much better. On the topic of crafting and multiple items, stacking is something really flawed as well. It isn't general limits of 30 for most resources that are the issue. It's items that refuse to stack for unknown reasons. The most annoying of all has to be the manila clam. It isn't recognized as a fish or anything, it's a resource. So why can't it stack? Especially when it's the sole ingredient for an item that does. To think Nintendo gave you an entire dressing room to mix and match clothing in, but you somehow can't buy multiple types of clothing at once. They should really just make it cart-based, as if it were an online store, so you can buy the entire day's catalog of clothing if you so desired. Then you could, I don't know, double tap A on the clothing items from your selection that you do want to wear. It's really strange because Mabel straight up sends the clothing that you were already wearing to your home's storage, meaning even with a full inventory, there's no real limit on how much you could actually purchase, as long as there's room in your home storage. If the excuse is to make it harder to design a nude outfit, people are going to find an excuse, and they already have. It isn't hard to do. And something that is a huge missed opportunity is the ability to use the Switch's touchscreen when making custom designs. Did Nintendo really forget the Switch has that again? Buying generally can be a bit weird, but most of what is available from the ATM, Leaf Store, or Nook's Cranny is good. The only real complaint is you should be able to choose how many of each item you want to purchase. Let it be flimsy tools, flower seeds, or bushes. There are a few things of note for these bad boys, but like most people, the prospects of visiting a seemingly randomly generated array of deserted islands was mind-blowing and incredibly exciting. But like a lot of things New Horizons has to offer, it's gotten old really fast. So first issue, big surprise, they're not really randomly generated at all, and their size is really small. Instead, they take from a number of preset island types, all having their own high or low chance of appearing or not. This is really bad, because if you have trash luck, you might get stuck finding the same island again and again. As a bunch of people I asked to help out on this list told me, a secondary form of currency that is gained through performing general tasks, yeah, that's kind of cool, kind of awesome, but they're kind of worthless after a while too. That's true. I didn't mention this in the Nook Mile Ticket Island section, but I feel no urge at all to spend 2,000 Nook Miles at a time to go to a potentially disappointing island. If they all acted like Tortimer's Island, where you were destined to find so many expensive, rare bugs and fish, I would always be visiting. But alas, that is not the case at all. Instead, we have Tarantula or Scorpion Island, and the islands that can provide the essentials to create them are not 100% promised upon every trip. Hell, who knows if they even intended Scorpion and Tarantula Islands to be made in the first place. Bring new craftables on a rotating cycle, especially affordable ones, like is available for music, clothing, and furniture in the Nook shopping menu. People really shouldn't be relying on getting new DIY recipes from washed up bottles, or the lucrative communities sharing recipes villagers think of on their island to people all over the world. This is probably an issue in the Nook shopping menu also, but I should be able to see what furniture I've already bought from each of the stores. This is supposedly better when you unlock the phone app, but I and many others are obviously not there yet. Also, I know you can check your catalog, but that's super inconvenient. If I've already bought a type of fence in the NMT redemption shop, it shouldn't come back. If this is the case for normal furniture, recipes, and upgrades, why is this the case here? Why are there so many different types of tickets that can be used for discounts and freebies I don't really need? I've counted 3 so far. One for the Able Sisters from LaBelle, the Nook Mile ticket, and the Sahara ticket. Why? One of the biggest new gameplay features that straight up changed what Animal Crossing is the ability to craft. But I want to pose this question. Is it thorough enough? Not even just thorough, does it make sense? I ask this because towards the start of the game, Tom Nook gives you multiple tasks that require you to bring resources to him and others to, for example, help build Nook's Cranny, your first bridge, and the furniture for inside and outside the 3 new plots. What's wrong here is the fact that after you build that first bridge, the recipe to make it again is gone, and you are forced to pay large sums of bells in order to buy any more. And of course, apart from the star rating system, there's no more furniture making quests or even NPCs that require resources for things. This doesn't count fruit. What I'm getting at here is, why is progression through crafting basically shelved? So many items that I see floating in and out of Nook's Cranny could easily be craftable, as well as paid for. Personally, I don't mind them being there, I just don't understand what validates one thing being craftable versus one other thing not. I think that after you build that first wooden bridge, you should have kept the recipe for it, and it should have just gotten more expensive to craft. I really feel like most items in the game should work like this. I want the ability to choose between spending bells on a bridge or saving them to craft it myself. Right? I'm not saying every item should be craftable, but a lot more should be, and you should have the choice to pay for it or to craft it. To me, it feels like the team came up with this really intuitive core system, but didn't go all in on it. There should be a bunch more resources to collect to make crafting more worthwhile and complex. I could not care less if Isabelle and friends rank my island a 1 or a 5, but for the folks who do, it is such a pain in the ass that fences are so detrimental to getting a 5-star rating. Most of the fences aren't that interesting or ugly. Regardless, it's obviously a subjective topic. The 5-star rating shouldn't be set in stone. You need this and this to achieve it. There should be levels of certain attributes that together allow the 5-star rating. I do not understand why there is no organization or sorting option for your pockets. Make it an upgrade through the Nook Miles kiosk. There are enough free buttons to go around. It's honestly a no-brainer. On the topic of pockets, for convenience sake, why is there no option to drop or store multiple items at once? Make it 9 or 8 max to fit the maximum drop area when you're standing still. And obviously, if this does happen, you can't drop items larger than 1x1 size. Make the button that you can do this Y. It has no current function when you're in your pockets. Even for sorting your pockets, it's worthwhile to remember that there are currently 9 unmapped buttons. I'm not personally looking for the ability to access everything wherever I am. I think having it work similarly to the settlements in Fallout 4's workshop is essential. Basically, just use whatever is in storage when you're crafting in your house. It's that easy. While we're at it, let there be a general option to eat multiple fruit at once. It just makes sense. Would make town changes so much easier. One more thing, there seems to be some weird choices between what can and can't be placed into your home storage. I've only experienced this with 2 things so far, but I'm dead sure there's bound to be more. Firstly, turnips. If the issue is to do with them expiring, just let them be on the clock when in storage. Allowing this would help clean up a lot of people's towns, mine included. The other item that can't be placed in storage are flowers. Sure, you can put red mums as the actual flower in there, but you can't put the flower stem nor plant into storage. Both flower plant and turnip storage were available in New Leaf. For how many emotions there are to use when out taking photos or interacting with friends, it's silly to think that you get one wheel of 8 to choose from. Swapping them in and out is slow and inconvenient. There should really be multiple tool wheels to go through to use your favorite emotes. There are currently 11 unmapped buttons on the Switch for when you're in the emote tab. I've heard some people enjoy this, and all the power to you, but it's really not good. It's such an unfulfilling mode for all players. It should not exist. Another topic of major contention. Initially, I was against the idea of different users having separate islands on the same console, mainly because this wasn't a feature in previous games. But after attempting to share my island with my 2 brothers, I changed my mind. It's more about how the game is designed. It's totally built as a one-player experience. Firstly, the role of the resident representative is restricted to the first player on the island, as it should be, but that's just it. The journey of building up your island from scratch, only to terraform it to your liking, is not intended as a multiple person experience. Besides, the island as a whole is first come, first served. If you aren't the first person on the game during each respective day, you miss the opportunity to get most major resources. Wood, stone, and iron, since the sources they come from don't refresh once a new player logs in. Which makes total sense, because Nintendo doesn't want people exploiting this to enhance the speed in which they acquire resources. But that doesn't make it the right decision. The right decision is letting creativity win, allowing each individual player to experience the same progression and opportunity. I don't know, it isn't difficult. Both my brothers haven't played in weeks for this sole reason. Just let people have islands connected to their individual Switch profiles. It's just ridiculous that this is the current case. It literally discourages play. How are saves not backed up to the cloud? There are no excuses, Nintendo. People pay for this service. You can't pick and choose what games it's offered to, especially in such a time-focused game as Animal Crossing. Hundreds, thousands of dedicated players' hours having the chance of being taken away in an instant is terrifying. Despite all these complaints, I honestly still love New Horizons. Animal Crossing is a series about lots of small things that together create an unrivaled, charming, immersive experience. So when something falls out of line, people are going to notice. I hope all of these observations can be used to change Animal Crossing New Horizons for the better, because it's what the game deserves, and it's what us fans deserve. Hi, Editor Bailey here. So turns out I've spent like 3+ weeks or 2+ weeks on this video now. I started writing all my notes for this specific topic on the 19th of April, and now I'm finishing the video on the 5th of May. So this is obviously, yeah, I don't know, it's taken a lot longer than I expected, but I'm glad. I haven't really done something like this before. any sort of like long format video or a video that requires a lot of writing. So I'm really proud of myself. And I hope that you guys enjoyed the video, because I've put a lot of time into this, and yeah, I'm proud of myself. So if you're proud of me too, be sure to subscribe, because I am going to be putting out a lot more content similar to this, and some different, but plenty of Animal Crossing stuff. So yeah, thanks plenty. Despite being the comprehensive Animal Crossing video, I've definitely missed some things. So if you have any problems of your own that you have with the game that I've missed, be sure to leave a comment, and I will make a follow-up video if there's enough of a response. I keep forgetting to mention this when I'm recording that section, but another thank you, a huge thank you to all of the sites, specifically like Nookipedia, the Animal Crossing fandom page, JVG's Jeff, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, and especially the Facebook groups that I asked questions in and they responded with really helpful tips and opinions. I've mentioned it already, but Animal Crossing Hell, Animal Crossing Private Lounge, the Animal Crossing New Horizons Reddit group, and then I'd also want to expand a huge thank you to the group chat that really helped me bring this all together, and yeah, thanks. CJ and Flick are gay.